Prior to the trade deadline, the Philadelphia 76ers were in the midst of a very strange season. While Philadelphia was doing quite well, and their best player was performing at an MVP level, the shadow of Ben Simmons was still lurking over them. Specifics aside, Simmons made it clear that he was not going to play for this team, meaning that the Sixers had someone making $33 million that was not present with the team in any capacity. Obviously, Philly had to move on from Ben, but considering how talented of a player he is, the front office wanted to remain patient to ensure they got the best return possible for him. In many people's eyes, this approach was frustrating because it felt like the Sixers were wasting an MVP caliber year from Embiid, but Philadelphia's patience paid off when they were able to acquire James Harden. This trade has elevated Philadelphia to contender status, and in today's video, I'm going to be explaining why the rest of the league should fear this team.
Murray, inside, incredible! LeBron James with no regard for human life.
They do have a timeout, decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown, bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry!
Before Philly traded for Harden, this team didn't have a natural playmaker on the perimeter. While Tyrese Maxey and Seth Curry are good scorers, they aren't exactly elite facilitators. That being said, Embiid had to create a lot of his own shots, and by virtue of being so dominant, he could get his teammates good looks whenever he was doubled. However, this heavy reliance on Embiid was not a recipe for championship success, as the team lacked identity without him on the court. By bringing Harden into the fold, Embiid has gotten easier shots, and he can go to the bench knowing that Harden can shoulder the load while he rests. The main way that Harden is helping Embiid get better looks is through the pick and roll and pick and pop. When Philly traded for Harden, some people worried that he wouldn't have great chemistry with Embiid because Embiid wasn't a quote-unquote pick and roll big. This was always a flawed argument to me because it portrayed Embiid as being a bad pick and roll player, when in reality he's been used primarily as a post player because his point guard in Ben Simmons was not a great pick and roll ball handler. Plus, we've seen guards like CP3, Trae Young, and John Wall get easy buckets for centers that are way less skilled than Embiid, so to think that an elite guard, big, pick and roll combo wouldn't work makes no sense to me. What's also helped Embiid is that Harden gets him the ball when he's open. While this may sound simple, there's been a few too many moments this year where Embiid has had good post position, where the defense would sag off of him and he wouldn't get the ball. Harden is one of the best in the league at seeing the floor, and whenever he shares the court with Embiid, Embiid will never feel like he isn't being seen. While it's great to see Harden and Embiid playing well together, this team would not be as scary if Harden wasn't gelling with his other teammates too. One player in particular that's looked great next to Harden has been Tyrese Maxey. Initially, some people did have concerns about Maxey's fit with Harden, but what's completely squashed those concerns is the way Maxey has been playing as an off-ball player next to him. Maxey has been making his three-point shots at a high rate all year, which makes him a catch-and-shoot threat, but what's even more impressive is the way he attacks off the bounce. Maxey has an extremely explosive first step which makes him very good at attacking closeouts, and Harden's gravity has opened up even more lanes for him. Because Harden is always a threat to drive to the rim and drive foul, help defenders have to pay close attention to him. However, Harden is great at recognizing when a defender is doing a poor job of seeing their man and the ball, and he's been swinging the ball over to Maxey and making the defense pay. When Philly isn't in a half-court setting, Harden's pushed the ball very well in transition, especially when he's connecting with Maxey. Maxey runs hard in transition, but he also fills the correct lanes as well, which gives Harden a window to pass to him. Above everything, it seems like Harden's presence has made Maxey an even more confident player. Harden has developed a bad reputation as a teammate over the years, but I don't think that statement tells the whole story. Sure, Harden hasn't gotten along well with other stars, however that's because egos can clash when multiple players view themselves as the number one option. Between Harden and Maxey, there seems to be an understanding of who belongs where on the totem pole. As talented as Maxey is, there have been times where his aggressiveness wanes and he'll fade into the background. Since Harden's joined the team though, Maxey has been more assertive when he gets the ball, and Harden has been a prime reason for that. In their last game before the All-Star break, Tyrese was struggling early on, but when he had a nice stretch of consecutive buckets, the first guy getting off the bench to support him was James Harden. Maxey clearly has a ton of respect for Harden, and it's doing wonders for his confidence that a former league MVP is imploring him to be more aggressive. Maxey is playing with a ton of confidence when he does have the ball, but because he's still willing to defer to teammates, he allows Harden to control the offense when they're in the game together. Harden has also shown off a nice connection with Philly's role players, especially George Niang. Like Embiid, Harden draws so much attention from the defense, and he does a great job of finding open teammates. Whether he's drawing two defenders off a screen and making a slick pass to the original screener, or attacking downhill and making a nice kick-out pass to a teammate, Harden does a great job of getting his teammates open looks. This is something new for the Sixers because, as I said earlier, they didn't have an elite facilitator before trading for Harden. Prior to the trade, Philly's offense was predicated on Embiid post-ups, Tobias Harris ISOs, and screen actions to get guards like Maxey and Curry open. The Sixers can still do those same things, but now they have a do-it-all superstar on the perimeter that can create something out of nothing. In totality, Harden has made Philadelphia's offense deadlier because he's getting his teammates better looks, he's an elite shot creator himself, and between Harden and Embiid, the Sixers are getting a ton of free throws. However, there is one player that hasn't fit too well with Harden so far, and that's Tobias Harris. The main issue with their fit is that Tobias needs a rhythm to be successful. He needs post touches, ISOs, or chances to handle the ball on the perimeter, and with Harden on the team, he's not getting those same opportunities. Harris is below average in catch-and-shoot situations, and in these first few games with Harden, he's primarily been getting those types of shots. Even when he tries to attack a closeout, he's not getting the same quality of shots that someone like Maxey is getting, because the defense isn't closing out as hard to contest his catch-and-shoot threes. The Sixers have run some nice set plays for Harris, but since they aren't running plays for him that frequently, it does beg the question of how important Harris's rhythm is to Philly's success. Harris is the fourth option on this team, and because of that, his scoring typically won't be the determining factor in whether Philadelphia wins a game or not. Hypothetically, if the Sixers could swap Harris for an above-average 3-and-D player right now, I think they'd make that swap. Yes, Harris is a talented player, and when given a larger role, he's proven that he can average around 20 points per game, but again, being that he's the fourth option on this team, he's not someone that the Sixers are heavily relying on to give them offense. While the fit isn't great, Philadelphia has to work with the players they currently have, and they could be doing a better job of putting Harris in situations where he can succeed. As I mentioned, Harris has played more of a catch-and-shoot role when playing next to Harden, but to solve that, the coaching staff could make more of an effort to stagger their minutes. When their starting five isn't in the game, Philly will run lineups with Maxey, Embiid, and 3 role players, Harden, Harris, and 3 role players, or just Harden and 4 role players. That has essentially been the Sixers' entire rotation scheme, and they've barely strayed away from it at all. I'm not saying that Philadelphia should never play Harden and Harris together, but their playstyles do not complement each other well, yet they're always on the floor together. On a nightly basis, Harris doesn't need to score a lot for the Sixers to win, but when the playoffs come around and every game is important, it would help if Tobias were in a good rhythm on nights when Harden or Embiid struggle. In order for Harris to get in a good rhythm though, Philly has to feature him in lineups that allow him to play his game. While the fit between Harden and Harris is not great, there is another big issue with this team, and that is their outside shooting. Philadelphia does have a number of players that can hit threes, but besides Harden, they don't have any elite ones. George Niang and Tyrese Maxey are good three-point shooters, but I wouldn't consider them to be elite. Guys like Danny Green and Furkan Korkmaz can make threes, but they're inconsistent. Tobias and Embiid are respectable three-point shooters at best, and then you have players in the rotation like Shake Milton and Thibault that the defense can aggressively help off of. Again, I wouldn't call Philadelphia's three-point shooting a weakness, but I wouldn't call it a strength of theirs either. While they'll definitely look to add more shooting in the offseason, there's nothing they can do this year, so they'll have to hope that it doesn't become too much of an issue during the playoffs. On the defensive end, this team is a bit of a mixed bag. There are some really good defensive players on this team, but as a unit there have been times where they simply play lazy defense. In Harden's first 6 games with Philly, they've had 3 games where they've fallen behind by double digits very early on. In Harden's first home game, they were down by over 15 points early on in the second quarter. Against the Cavaliers, they trailed by 13 points after the first quarter, and in their last game against the Nets, the game was pretty much decided midway through the second quarter. Because they have so much talent, Philly has seemed to think that they can flip a switch whenever and turn up their defensive intensity, which combined with their offensive firepower could help them claw their way back into any game. While this worked against the Knicks and the Cavs, they got absolutely embarrassed trying to play catch-up against the Nets. If you want to beat any team in this league, but specifically the elite teams, you can't afford to complain about foul calls and not get back on defense, you can't afford to not communicate on the defensive end and allow your opponent to pick you apart with their ball movement, and you definitely can't afford to let the stars on the opposing team get into a rhythm with easy bucket after easy bucket. Philly won their first 5 games with Harden on the team, and I'm sure they were feeling pretty good about themselves going into that Nets game. I think that loss will have humbled this team though, and they'll now realize that they can't just run through everyone they go up against. By trading for Harden, the Sixers gave themselves a legitimate shot at winning a title. Before acquiring him, they were a good team, but it's rare that a team with a solo star wins a championship. Philadelphia now has 2 superstars, and while their loss to Brooklyn proved that there's plenty of room for them to grow, NBA fans should still be very optimistic about this team. They're explosive on offense, they can score from all 3 levels on the floor, they get a bunch of free throws, and while their defense is inconsistent, they've had enough moments of defensive excellence to have me excited about their potential on that end. That being said, this team has to work on 3 things if they want to win it all this year. Number 1, they can't play as much iso ball as they did in that Nets game. 2, the coaching staff has to improve their rotations. And 3, they have to play intense team defense all throughout the game, not just when they're trying to mount a comeback. Even though this current roster is flawed, if they can show improvement in these 3 areas, Philly can compete with anyone in a 7-game series this year. More importantly, with Maxey, Embiid, and Harden only being 21, 27, and 32 respectively, the 76ers will have several years to compete for a title. Philadelphia gave themselves a better shot to win a championship this year, but even if they fall short, they can rest easy knowing that they can shake things up. With Tyrese Maxey being in just the 2nd year of a 4-year rookie contract, Philly could overhaul their roster and bring in the right complementary pieces for Maxey, Harden, and Embiid. If things do work out this year, which is definitely a possibility, Philadelphia could simply keep their roster intact, but if they are eliminated from the playoffs, they could trade Tobias Harris along with picks to free up cap space. Either way, Philly has multiple avenues to improve, and with as much talent as they already have, the NBA should fear that the Sixers are only going to get better. Anyways, that's going to be all for today's video. Make sure to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts down in the comments below. And with all that being said, I'm out, and I'll see you in the next video.